Quads, tris and n-gons. Which type of polygon is best to 3D model with? Over the past few years of teaching Blender online, this is a confusion I've seen a lot. So today I thought I'd put your confusion to rest and explain the difference between what these polygons are and which ones you should use while 3D modeling in Blender. Let's get started. This here is a tri, and as you can see, if I press tab to go into edit mode, it is made up of 3 edges, creating a triangle, and they're known as tris for short. Tris are, from what I can understand, are what render engines work with. For example, when you export a 3D model, such as to use in a game engine, you will find all the quads and n-gons will be turned into tris. We'll talk more about quads and n-gons later, but essentially a quad is a face with 4 edges, and an n-gon is a face with 5 or more edges. But yeah, this is why 3D modelers sometimes recommend to triangulate your model before exporting it, just in case it gets turned into tris in a way you don't like, if you were modeling with quads, for example. Let's talk more about quads though. This here is a quad, and if I press tab to go into edit mode, you can see, like I mentioned earlier, it is made up of 4 edges. Quads are the easiest to model with, especially since they work with some important Blender shortcuts, such as selecting loops, for example. If I go into edit mode with this object I've made here, press 3 on the keyboard to go into face select mode, and then press alt left click, you can see I can select this entire loop here. It would also work with edges and vertices too. However, I'm going to keep this selected and I'll right click and then press triangulate faces. It's not going to allow us to select this loop anymore because of the tris. So even though tris are the final form of all topology in 3D, for modeling it means we can't use some of our tools in Blender. Another one we can't use would be adding loops. For example, adding a loop cut. If I press Ctrl R to add a loop cut, you can see I can add it over my quad loop here, but I can add it over our tris here. So for that reason, modeling with quads is a lot better than modeling with tris. You also find that quads work a lot better with some of the modifiers in Blender. For example, the subdivision surface modifier. You can see on this cube here that I've added, it's just a normal cube. If I press tab into edit mode, you can see. I'm just going to left click my blue spanner here to go into modifier properties, press add modifier, then under generate, I'll choose subdivision surface. You can see that the modifier will work just fine and as expected. But if I was to press tab to go into edit mode, left click this top face here, right click and then triangulate my faces, you can see straight away that the shape of our subdivision surface has changed on the top, as it's now turning this triangle into 3 quads and then subdividing it from there, rather than just working off the quad we had. You also notice if I press shift A, then under mesh I'll choose cylinder, and I'll go to add modifier and then choose subdivision surface. It's going to kind of freak out here, and that's because the subdivision surface is trying to break this n-gon on the top. If I press tab to go into edit mode, this n-gon on the top into quads, and it's creating this mess as a result. Thankfully though, an easy way to fix this would just be to left click our top face and press I to inset. Then I could press I to inset again if I'm still having some issues, and that's fixed that up for the most part. While quads are great for modeling, sometimes when making a model which is going to be animated, a couple of tris can be used to improve the way the model bends during animation. This mainly applies to low poly characters at the joint points and things like that. To summarize though, quads are best for modeling, as modeling with just tris would be painfully slow since a lot of the tools and modifiers wouldn't work. But that's not to say you can never use tris, as they do have some use cases. For example, when creating a low poly character to be animated. An n-gon is just any face with 5 or more edges. As you might imagine, for reasons we talked about earlier, you may prefer to model with quads. However, for hard surface modeling, which is modeling models that don't deform and keep their shape, for example doors, tables, canisters, and things like that, sometimes it can be faster to model with n-gons, and then clean up your topology later if you're having shading issues or in order to prepare for exporting. But for us, we are going to be modeling our first object, this table here, using the quad-based workflow, as I think it's a good place to start for beginners, and it's important to understand the concepts behind quad-based modeling first. However, I do hope to talk about using n-gons for hard surface modeling in the future. And yeah, that just about covers an introduction for the 3 different types of polygons in 3D, and of course Blender. If you want to learn more about 3D modeling, I do have a playlist here called 3D Modeling for Absolute Beginners, where I go over all the tools, techniques, theories, and concepts that you need to know to get really good at 3D modeling inside of Blender. Apart from that though, I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.